Find a comfortable position. Let your body relax. Take one slow breath in and let it go. There is nowhere you need to be right now, nothing to do, just rest and let the story carry you gently away. Imagine you have just woken up, not in your own bed, not in your own century. You are standing in a city of 1,000,000 people. The year is 1520. The sun has not yet risen over the Bosphorus, that narrow strip of water where two continents touch, where Europe ends and Asia begins, and the city around you is already alive. Minarets rise in the dark above you, slender and white. From somewhere above, a voice begins. Not a bell, not a drum, a human voice calling out across the rooftops and the sleeping streets, across the domes and the markets and the cemeteries and the sea. The call to prayer. It has been rising from this city every morning for 70 years, and it will continue rising for 4 more centuries before this empire finally ends. You do not speak Ottoman Turkish. You do not know which direction to face when you pray. You have, somewhere in your pocket, a few silver coins that you cannot identify and cannot spend until you figure out what they are worth. And somewhere in this city of mosques and caravans and Janissaries and spice traders and court physicians and professional poets, someone is already watching you with the quiet attention of a person who knows exactly how lost you are. Welcome to Constantinople. The Ottomans call it Constantinople. One day it will be called Istanbul. Right now it is the capital of the most powerful empire on earth. And tonight we are going to walk through it together, slowly, carefully, taking our time. So find a comfortable position, let your breathing slow, and let us begin. The city wakes differently than you expect. You expected chaos. What you get instead is layers, sounds that arrive one at a time, each one settling before the next appears, like a composition being assembled from silence. First, the call to prayer. Then somewhere below that, the sound of water, the city's fountains running in the dark, fed by aqueducts that have been carrying water to this peninsula since the Romans built them 1,000 years ago. The Ottomans repaired them, extended them, added dozens of new fountains at street corners and mosque courtyards, because water in this empire is not merely practical, it is sacred. Clean water is a form of prayer. Then the birds. Pigeons first, then crows, then the high-pitched whistle of swifts beginning their long morning circuits above the rooftops. Constantinople sits at the junction of 2 seas and is constantly moved by wind. The wind has names here, different names depending on which direction it comes from. And the sailors who work the harbor can tell the time of day by the smell of the wind alone. Then, very slowly, the city's human sounds begin to arrive. A door opening on a nearby street, wooden wheels on stone. A man's voice, calling out something you cannot understand. A vendor announcing himself, beginning his morning circuit through the neighborhood, offering bread or water or news. The sounds of cooking beginning in the large communal kitchens attached to the mosques. The immarets, which feed hundreds of poor people every day at no charge, because the Ottoman understanding of charity is architectural. You do not pass the poor a coin, you build them a kitchen, and you feed them for centuries. You are in the most cosmopolitan city in the world. This requires a moment to actually understand. Constantinople in 1520 is not merely large. It is plural in a way almost no other city on earth can claim. There are Greeks here, descendants of the Byzantine civilization the Ottomans conquered in 1453, who have been living in this city for 1,000 years before the Ottomans arrived. There are Jews, tens of thousands of Jews, welcomed here by Sultan Bayezid II in 1492, when Spain expelled them, because the Sultan reportedly said that he could not understand how the Spanish king could be considered wise when he was impoverishing his own kingdom by sending the most skilled merchants and physicians in Europe to enrich his enemies. There are Armenians and Venetians and Genoese and Persians and Egyptians. There are people from places that do not yet have names in any language you speak. They all live in this city. They trade in this city. They pray in their own ways, in their own neighborhoods. And most of them, most of the time, do not kill each other. This will strike you as unremarkable until you remember what Europe looks like in 1520. Where religious difference is currently producing wars that will kill hundreds of thousands of people and continue for another century. In Constantinople, the system is called the Millet. Each religious community governs itself according to its own laws in matters of family and faith. The Ottoman state collects taxes and maintains order. Everyone else lives their own life. It is not equality. The system has hierarchies, and the non-Muslim communities pay an extra tax. But it produces something Europe will not manage for another 200 years. A city where you can tell which neighborhood you are in by listening to what language people are arguing in. The sky is lightening now. The minarets are becoming visible against the gray. You are very, very far from home, and you have not yet eaten breakfast. The smell of the morning market reaches you before you see it. Bread first, warm, yeasty, dark-crusted bread being unloaded from the bakeries that have been running since midnight. Then coffee. This is important. You are in Constantinople in 1520, and there is coffee here, which means you are in one of only a handful of cities on earth where you can currently drink this thing. The Ottomans discovered coffee in Yemen roughly 50 years ago and brought it north, and in the coffee houses that are beginning to open in the alleys near the Grand Bazaar, you can sit on a cushion and drink a small cup of something dark and bitter and extraordinary, while men around you talk politics, play backgammon, recite poetry, and conduct business in the relaxed and purposeful way of people who have found a good excuse to spend several hours in a comfortable room. Coffee will reach Europe later, much later, and when it does, it will change European intellectual life in ways that historians are still arguing about. Some of them making the case that the shift from ale to coffee as the daily beverage of the educated classes is part of what caused the Enlightenment. You cannot verify this, but you can taste the coffee, which is remarkable, and you can sit with it for a moment in the morning light and understand that you are watching the beginning of something. You buy a simit. This is a ring of bread covered in sesame seeds, warm from the oven, sold by a boy moving through the streets with a tray balanced on his head. The price is 1 para, the smallest copper coin, worth almost nothing and worth enough to feed yourself. You hold it and tear pieces from it slowly, the sesame seeds falling onto your fingers and into the dust of the street. Around you, the market is assembling itself. The Grand Bazaar, the Kapalı Çarşı, the covered market, is a 10-minute walk from where you stand, and it is the commercial heart of the world's largest city. It was built after the conquest in 1453, expanded under every sultan, and by this century it contains over 4,000 shops under its vaulted stone roof. Textile merchants, goldsmiths, spice traders, their goods piled in open sacks that send clouds of turmeric and cumin and pepper into the air whenever a customer disturbs them. Jewelers, bookbinders, people selling nothing but buttons, people selling nothing but hats. The organization of the bazaar is strict. Each trade has its own section, its own street, its own identity, because the Ottomans understand intuitively that a market that organizes itself by trade is more efficient than one that organizes itself by chaos. You pass a man carrying a bolt of silk so large and so red that it seems to generate its own light. You pass a woman, heavily veiled, moving quickly, accompanied by two other women and a man who may be a servant, who does not look at you or at anything in particular, moving through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of someone who knows exactly where she is going and has learned that eye contact is a kind of invitation she does not wish to extend. You step aside, she passes. The silk merchant turns a corner. A cat. There are thousands of cats in this city, fed from the same piety that builds public fountains, watches you from a window ledge with the assessment of something that has been in this city longer than any empire. You are beginning to understand the scale of this place. The Ottoman Empire in 1520, under the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, who has just taken the throne this very year, stretches from Hungary to Persia, from the Crimea to Egypt, from Algeria to the borders of Safavid Iran. It controls the two holiest cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina. It controls the eastern Mediterranean trade routes. It will, within a decade, be laying siege to Vienna. It is not merely large, it is the organizing force of a significant portion of the known world, and everything that moves through that world, silk and spice and slaves and scholarship and silver and salt, moves through Ottoman infrastructure, pays Ottoman taxes, and passes under the gaze of Ottoman administrators who have been trained since childhood for exactly this purpose. The bread is warm. The coffee, when you find a cup of it, is extraordinary. You sit with it in the early morning light and watch the city assemble itself around you, and you try to understand where you are. Let your breathing slow a little here. There is no hurry. The city is not going anywhere. The empire has been here for 2 centuries, and it will be here for 4 more. You have time. The call to prayer has finished. The minarets stand against a sky that is turning slowly from gray to rose to the specific pale gold of a Turkish morning. The Bosphorus, visible from almost any elevated point in the city, is beginning to catch the light, that narrow ribbon of water between 2 continents, busy already with the small ferries called kayaks crossing back and forth, their oarsmen standing and pushing rather than sitting and pulling, the way watermen do in this part of the world. Across the water, the Asian shore, a 10-minute crossing, another continent. The Ottoman Empire spans it as casually as you might step across a doorway. You close your eyes for a moment. The city breathes around you. You breathe with it. By mid-morning, you have become aware of a problem. You do not know what you are not allowed to do. This is the particular danger of being a foreigner in an imperial city. Not that the rules are cruel, many of them are not, but that they are invisible to you, written in a language you do not speak, and the consequences of violating them range from mild embarrassment to something considerably more serious, depending on which rule you have broken and who was watching. The Ottoman Empire is governed by 2 parallel legal systems that coexist with a complexity that Ottoman lawyers spend careers navigating. There is Islamic law, Sharia, which governs matters of personal conduct, religious observance, family, and inheritance. And there is Kanun, imperial law issued by the sultans themselves, which governs everything that Islamic law does not clearly address: taxation, trade, land, the organization of the military, and the bureaucracy. The current Sultan, Suleiman, will become known in the Ottoman world primarily as Suleiman the Lawgiver, because his reorganization of these two systems into something coherent and comprehensive will be his greatest achievement. Europe will call him magnificent. His own people will remember him for the law. You do not know any of this. What you do know is that the man following you since the bazaar is not a tourist. He is a Çarşıbekçisi, a market warden. They patrol the bazaar and its surrounding streets, enforcing the complex regulations that govern trade: the correct weight of a loaf of bread, the purity of silver, the legitimacy of a merchant's guild membership. They carry a staff, they have authority, and you have, apparently, done something irregular, which you discover when the warden stops you at a corner and says something firm and not at all friendly. This is the moment you learn the word for interpreter: dragomans. Professional translators are everywhere in Constantinople. They have to be. The city speaks 15 languages on a good day. Many of them speak 6 or 8, and their services are available for a fee that you discover after some complicated negotiation conducted mostly in gestures is manageable with the coins you have. The dragoman who appears, a short man with an impressive mustache and the distracted air of someone who has already solved 11 problems this morning and is mildly irritated to be presented with a 12th, speaks Greek, Italian, and something that might be a dialect of Turkish you can almost follow. The problem, it turns out, is that you sat down in a section of the market that is reserved for a specific guild and are not a member of that guild. This is not a serious offense. It is an offense of ignorance. The market warden is not hostile, he is categorical. You need to move. You need to not sit there again. You need to understand that the organization of this market is not decorative. It is the entire point. The dragoman translates. You nod, you move. The warden watches you go, satisfied. The guilds run everything, the dragoman tells you in something close enough to Italian that you can follow it. Every trade, every craft. You want to sell bread, you join the bread guild. You want to make shoes, you join the shoe guild. The guild sets the prices. The guild sets the quality. You cannot undersell another guild member. You cannot oversell. If you try, the warden will know. They always know. Who enforces it, you ask? He looks at you with mild surprise, as if the question is slightly too obvious to be worth answering. The guild enforces it, he says, and the guild is also the government in this neighborhood, and the mosque is also the government in the next neighborhood, and the army is also the government everywhere. The Ottomans like having several governments at the same time. It makes it harder for any single person to become too powerful. You think about this as you walk. It will take you the rest of the day to understand that he is entirely right. The afternoon heat is substantial. Constantinople in summer sits between two bodies of water and catches the full force of the sun, and by early afternoon the stone streets radiate heat like a slow oven. The shade under the covered sections of the bazaar is genuine relief. The architects who designed these arched stone roofs understood this problem and solved it 800 years ago, and the solution has not changed because the problem has not changed. You find a fountain. The public fountains of Constantinople are worth stopping at, and not only for the water. They are works of architecture, marble basins carved with flowing calligraphy, inscriptions from the Quran, the names of the donors who funded them. The Ottoman wealthy do not build statues. They build fountains. They build caravanserai, large inns where travelers and their animals can stay for 3 days free of charge, funded by religious endowments. They build hospitals, they build schools, they build soup kitchens. The form that power takes in this empire is often a building that feeds someone, and the buildings are designed to last centuries because the endowments that fund them are structured to be perpetual. You drink from the fountain. The water is cold and tastes of stone. A woman refilling a clay jug smiles briefly at you. Not an invitation, just a recognition. The universal acknowledgement of two strangers sharing a public good. And then she is gone, moving back toward her neighborhood with the practiced efficiency of someone who has made this walk 1,000 times. You watch the water flow. It has been flowing from the same aqueducts for a very long time. The afternoon has a different quality than the morning. The pace of the city has shifted, not slower exactly, but more internal. The big transactions of the morning are over. The merchants are counting, the bakers are sleeping, the students at the medrace, the religious school attached to the great Suleimaniye mosque that the Sultan will commission in 4 years, are reciting the Quran in overlapping voices, a sound like water over stones, continuous and without particular beginning or end. You find a place to sit in the shade of a large plane tree in a small square. Your feet are tired. You have walked several miles today, in shoes that were not designed for the stone streets of an imperial Ottoman city. You have eaten bread and drunk coffee and negotiated accidentally with a market warden and learned 3 words of Turkish and spent approximately the right amount of money on approximately the right things, and you are still somehow not dead. This is an accomplishment. You should not underestimate it. Let the afternoon hold you for a moment. There is no better place in the world to rest than under a plane tree in an Ottoman city in summer. The tree is enormous, centuries old, its trunk wider than 2 men could reach around, its branches covering the entire square in a moving shade that breathes slightly with the wind. These trees are everywhere in this empire, planted at caravanserai and squares and mosque courtyards with the same intentionality as the fountains. Rest is not laziness here. Rest is a right. The architecture of this empire includes the architecture of human rest. The sound of the recitation from the madrasa continues, soft and rhythmic, rising and falling with a pattern that has nothing to do with emphasis and everything to do with breath. Breath in. Phrase. Breath out. The voice of a 14-year-old student who has been memorizing this text for 8 years and will spend another 6 years before he is considered educated, in the Ottoman sense of that word. Let your own breathing match that rhythm if you like. Slow and steady. The afternoon light through the leaves is the particular gold of 4 o'clock, when the day is thinking about ending even though it has several hours left. The birds in the tree above you are arguing about something. They have been arguing about it for 1,000 years. They will continue arguing about it long after this empire is gone. You have heard about the Topkapi Palace. Everyone has heard about Topkapi. It sits on a promontory at the tip of the city's peninsula, where the Bosphorus meets the Golden Horn meets the Sea of Marmara, and it commands a view of 3 bodies of water simultaneously. From its towers, on a clear day, you can see the Asian shore. You can see the islands in the Marmara. You can see the European hills across the Bosphorus. The Sultan, if he chooses, can watch the approach of fleets from 3 directions without moving from his garden. You cannot go inside. This is the first thing to understand about Topkapi. It is not a building. It is a world, sealed off from the city around it by its walls and its guards and its silence. The people who live inside it, the Sultan, his family, his vast household, the thousands of servants and bureaucrats and administrators and soldiers and pages and concubines, live according to a protocol so elaborate and so precise that there are people inside whose entire function is to know what every other person inside is permitted to do. The palace has its own economy, its own water supply, its own garden. It is, in many ways, a city inside a city. And the city it most resembles is not any city you have ever seen. It is closer to an idea of perfect order. Every person in their place, every object in its place, every action governed by a rule that has been refined over decades of careful consideration. The Sultan you are living under, Suleiman, who took the throne this year at the age of 26, is about to embark on a reign of 46 years that will be remembered for centuries. He will personally lead 13 military campaigns. He will reform the legal code of the entire empire. He will commission the construction of some of the most beautiful buildings that have ever existed. He will correspond with the kings of Europe as an equal, sometimes more than an equal, since he controls the eastern Mediterranean trade routes that Europe depends on for its survival. He will fall in love with a woman named Hurrem Sultan, a former slave from Ruthenia, and she will become the most politically powerful woman in the history of this empire. A woman who conducts her own diplomacy, who writes to foreign kings, who survives and navigates the most dangerous political environment of the 16th century, which is the Ottoman court. None of this has happened yet. It is 1520. Suleiman is 26. He has been sultan for less than a year. And somewhere inside those walls, in rooms you will never see, a young man is learning what it means to be the most powerful monarch in the world, in an empire where the penalty for getting it wrong is absolute, and the rewards for getting it right are beyond anything you can currently imagine. You stand at the gate and look at the walls for a long time. Then you turn back toward the city. There is something else about this empire that you should know. Something that the palace walls do not advertise. The soldiers guarding the gates of Topkapi, the Janissaries, the most elite fighting force in the known world, were not born Ottoman. They were taken. Every few years, Ottoman officials traveled through the Christian villages of the Balkans and Anatolia and selected boys, 8 years old, 10 years old, strong, intelligent, healthy, taken from their families under a system called devshirme, the collection, converted to Islam, trained from childhood in the palace schools, languages, mathematics, horsemanship, warfare, theology, music, calligraphy. The best of them became the Sultan's personal guard. The very best became Grand Viziers, the second most powerful men in the empire. The man who has been Grand Vizier for the last 15 years, Piri Mehmed Pasha, was born in a Greek Christian family in the Balkans. He was taken at the age of 10. He speaks 7 languages. He has administered an empire of 30 million people. He is, by any measure, one of the most powerful men who has ever lived. His family, in the village where he was born, still tells stories about the boy who was taken. Whether those stories are proud or grieving depends on who is telling them. Here's the thing that will stay with you. Somewhere in Europe right now, there is a family that does not know their son is standing behind the gate you are looking at. And somewhere in this empire, that son if he survived the training, if he rose through the ranks, does not think of himself as taken. He thinks of himself as made. The Ottomans did not destroy the people they conquered. They absorbed them, transformed them, turned the children of their enemies into the administrators of their empire. You look at the walls of Topkapi for a long time. You think about what it means to be made into something new. Whether that is a gift or a theft depends entirely on where you are standing. And then you turn back toward the city. The evening comes slowly to Constantinople. The light begins to change around 5 in the afternoon. Not dimming exactly, but shifting, the harsh gold of midday becoming something softer and more horizontal, catching the minarets at an angle that makes them glow. The mosques that seem imposing in the morning light seem something else at this hour, more human, more possible. The call to prayer comes again, and this time you are ready for it. You stop walking when it begins. You watch the men around you pause in their work, orient themselves, complete what they are doing, or put it down. Some go inside. Some simply turn toward Mecca and bow their heads for a moment. Right there in the street, with the traffic of the city flowing around them, and then they are done and moving again. It is not a disruption of life. It is woven into life. 5 times a day, every day, since before any of these men were born. The city has organized itself around it the way a river organizes itself around a stone. You walk toward the harbor. The Golden Horn in the evening is extraordinary. This natural harbor that has defined the shape of this city since it was founded, the curved inlet that gave it its name, is lit now with the last of the sun, and the dozens of ships at anchor are silhouetted against the water, their masts rising against the pink sky. There are Ottoman galleys here, long and low and painted red, their oar banks shipped for the night. There are merchant vessels from Venice and Genoa, flying their own flags, because the Ottomans allow foreign merchants to trade in Constantinople under treaties called capitulations, a word that here means something like concession, an agreement that allows foreign merchants to be subject to their own laws rather than Ottoman law in commercial disputes. This system will eventually be used against the Ottomans centuries from now by empires that have grown stronger. But in 1520, it is simply a pragmatic tool of trade, and the Venetian merchants who benefit from it are fully aware that they are guests in someone else's city and behave accordingly. The fishermen are bringing in the evening catch. The Bosphorus is extraordinarily rich in fish. There are species here that migrate through the strait twice a year, and the timing of those migrations has been known to the people of this city for thousands of years. The Ottomans take the fish seriously, as they take all practical knowledge seriously. There are records in the palace archives of fish counts going back centuries, the kind of careful data collection that says something important about how a long-lived empire thinks about its own continuity. You buy grilled fish from a man cooking over coals at the edge of the harbor. Mackerel, you think, though you cannot be sure. It is wrapped in bread, pressed with a slice of onion and a scattering of herbs you cannot name. You eat it standing at the water's edge, watching the ships. The fish is remarkable. Let the harbor hold you now. Let the light fade slowly. Let the water move against the stone embankment in that small, regular sound. Not waves exactly, just the constant, subtle motion of a body of water that is never entirely still. The ships creak at their anchors. Somewhere across the Golden Horn, a lamp is being lit in a window, and then another, and then slowly the city begins to illuminate itself. Not all at once, but gradually, the way a thought arrives, individual points of light becoming a constellation, a pattern, a presence. The first stars are appearing above the Bosphorus. You are standing in the middle of the 16th century, in the most powerful city in the world, eating fish at the edge of the water, and you are, despite everything, essentially all right. This is the thing about the Ottoman Empire that is hardest to convey to someone who has only read about it. It is vast, it is complex, it is governed by rules you cannot fully understand in a single day. It will 400 years from now be gone, broken apart by the same forces of nationalism and industrialization and European expansion that will reshape the entire world. But right now, in this evening, in this city, with this fish and this light and this water, it is alive. It is fully, completely alive. And you are inside it. You finish eating, you wipe your hands on the bread, you throw the last piece to the seabirds, who take it immediately, as they have always taken whatever is offered, as they will continue to take it long after everyone standing at this harbor tonight is gone. The night comes fully now. The lamps in the houses glow orange. The coffee houses are busy. They will be busy until late, long past the hour when the markets close, because the Ottoman coffee house is not a cafe in any later sense. It is a public room, available to anyone who can afford a cup, and it functions as a news exchange, a political forum, a literary salon, a chess club, and a place to sit in companionable silence when silence is what you need. There have been attempts at various points in Ottoman history to close the coffee houses on the grounds that they produce sedition. Men who talk together in the dark will eventually talk about things the government would prefer they not talk about. These attempts have failed every time because a city of 1 million people cannot be prevented from having somewhere to sit and talk. The coffee house wins every time. You find a seat near the entrance of one. The room is warm. The smell of coffee is extraordinary, that particular burnt dark sweetness that you now associate entirely with this city. Men sit on low cushioned benches around low tables. Backgammon is being played in one corner. Poetry is being recited in another. A man with a small audience, speaking in an elevated register that even your limited understanding of the language recognizes as different from ordinary speech. Ottoman court poetry is one of the most technically demanding literary forms that has ever existed, requiring the poet to juggle rhyme schemes and metrical patterns and allusion and wordplay simultaneously in a language that was itself a technical achievement. Ottoman Turkish was a deliberately constructed literary language, a fusion of Turkish grammar with Persian vocabulary and Arabic theological terminology, used in the court and the literature while ordinary people spoke a simpler vernacular. The poet finishes. There is a murmur of appreciation. Someone refills cups. The backgammon game reaches a crisis point and resolves it. A man near you is writing something in a small notebook, his reed pen moving quickly in the compact, flowing script of Ottoman calligraphy, which you cannot read but which is visually extraordinary, the letters connecting and flowing into each other, the whole line moving like a river. You sit with your coffee and breathe. Let the warmth of the room be with you now. Let the sounds around you settle into something like music, the voices and the backgammon pieces and the reed pen scratching paper and somewhere outside the water and the distant call that marks the hour. The light in the room is warm and slightly smoky. The cushion under you is worn to a shape that suggests 1,000 previous people who sat here and were, briefly, comfortable. You are very far from home. You have been in this city for one day. You have eaten twice. You have been corrected by a market warden. You have watched the call to prayer change the rhythm of the entire city 5 times. You have seen the walls of a palace that contains a world you will never be permitted to enter. You have stood at the edge of the Bosphorus and watched 2 continents drift toward each other and away again in the light. You have understood, in the way that only direct experience produces understanding, that this empire is not the caricature of itself that any summary will make it. It is complicated in the way that only real things are complicated. It has rules that exist for reasons. It has systems that work, imperfectly but genuinely. It has people in it who are trying to live their lives with the same combination of hope and fear and ordinary desire that people everywhere, in every century, have always tried to live their lives with. You have survived one day of it. Most visitors historically have managed at least that. The coffee is finished, the room is warm. Outside, the city is quieting, not silent, never entirely silent, but the particular quality of the city's sound at this hour is different from the morning, less purposeful, more internal. The sound of a city thinking. Your eyes are growing heavy. This is appropriate. You have walked many miles today, over the stone streets of a city that was never designed for comfort, designed instead for function, for density, for the movement of 1 million people through a peninsula that is not large enough, that has never been large enough, that has been expanding itself into the sea and up the hills for centuries and is still not quite enough. But the city accommodates. Cities always accommodate. They bend to the pressure of the people in them, slowly, the way stone bends to water, not quickly, but absolutely, given enough time. You are in a city that has been accommodating for 2,500 years. That was Greek before it was Roman, before it was Byzantine, before it was Ottoman. That has seen the rise and fall of 4 major empires, and is currently, as you sit here with your empty coffee cup, in the middle of the 5th. That will, in 400 years, become a modern republic. That will survive all of it. All the conquests and fires and earthquakes and plagues and sieges and changes of name and changes of God, because it sits at a place where 2 seas meet and 2 continents touch, and everything that moves between east and west must eventually pass through it. And that is a kind of power that empires come and go and the city endures. The city endures. Let your body be heavy now. Let the sounds of the coffee house become a background, like rain. The voices of men speaking languages you do not know, the soft click of backgammon pieces, the scratching of a reed pen, the distant, barely audible sound of the Bosphorus moving in the dark. Let your breathing slow. You have done enough for one day. You have seen enough. The city will still be here tomorrow. The empire will still be here tomorrow. The call to prayer will come again before dawn, rising from the minarets, crossing the water, finding you wherever you happen to be sleeping. You do not need to understand everything tonight. You have the rest of your life to understand. For now, all you need to do is breathe and rest, and let the city of the world's desire hold you gently in its enormous and improbable and ancient and astonishing hand. The Bosphorus moves outside. The stars are out over the Asian shore. The empire is 562 years old tonight, and it has 400 more years ahead of it, and it does not know this, and you do not need to know it either. Just breathe. Just rest. The empire is sleeping. You are sleeping. The water moves.